You are a human being, not a robot. Unless you're watching this video in the future and you actually are a robot, in which case, I mean no offense, but you should probably find something better to do with your time than watching my videos. Everyone you work with is human, including the leaders, even the really senior leaders. I've been a leader for over 25 years and I'm human as well. I know this is all obvious, but I think lots of us, including those of us that are leaders and those of us that are not, tend to forget that leaders are human. And we act as if leaders are something other than human, either superhuman or inhuman monsters. The truth is, leaders are humans, people just like everyone else. And I think forgetting this leads to a number of bad side effects. First, when we think that our leaders are not really like us, not really human, we tend not to communicate very well with them. We communicate with them as if they were some kind of leadership robot that must be spoken to only in a very particular way. One example of this is the person who won't show their proposal or presentation to a leader until they're 100% sure it's 100% finished. Or to put it another way, never. And this is probably not entirely that person's fault. The chances are they've formed this fear based on experience. If that leader has reacted badly to half-cooked work being shared with them or tends to rip things apart in an unkind way, then they're encouraging people to treat them that way. Another example of this, which I often see, is when someone is trying to get something from a leader, but they think they have to present it in business speak. They have to explain the KPIs and the impact on the bottom line instead of just talking to them like another person and explaining why they want this thing and why they think it's a good idea. Now, I realize you can take this too far. Leaders tend to be busy and it tends to be harder to get time with them. But as with the previous example, if a leader only ever hears things in these terms, then they lose touch with the human nature of the people around them and probably their own as well. So next time you're presenting a proposal to a leader, include a bit of humanity in it. So you might say, I think this could be a really impactful project and I think leading it would be really motivating for me, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to make this whole video about the ways in which people treat their leaders as if they're not human. I'm sure you can think of some yourself. What I really wanted to talk about is how we as leaders forget that we ourselves are human. We forget that we have lives outside of work, or we allow others to be pushed into acting that way. Life cannot be all about work. Work can and should be a really important, stimulating, enjoyable part of your life, but it can't be your whole life. No doubt you have friends, family, hobbies, and dreams outside of work, and leadership should not be a reason to neglect all of that. You've heard it said a million times, but it's true. No one lies on their deathbed wishing they'd spent more time in the office working. And part of this is about setting clear boundaries. As managers and leaders, we should be helping everyone around us to do that, but we should also be doing it for ourselves. So when you encourage people not to check or respond to email outside of work hours, listen to what you're saying and apply it to yourself. If nothing else, leaders that send emails outside of work hours create, whether knowingly or not, an expectation on others that they'll do the same. But as well as looking out for the well-being of others, you need to be looking out for your own well-being. If you aren't looking after yourself, you won't be able to look after anyone else. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. Another aspect I want to talk about is the expectations we put on ourselves, not necessarily about working hours, but about quality of work, about our ability to know everything, to get things right, to not make mistakes, to be able to handle everything and anything that's thrown at us, to never say no, to never admit to weakness or to being overwhelmed. And that's all because we forget we're human. Yeah, robots might be able to do all those things, but humans can't. You shouldn't expect it of anyone else, and you shouldn't expect it of yourself. And if you do, you might find it works fine for a while, maybe even for years, but eventually you're going to break. Burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, whatever you want to call it, it's a natural consequence of not setting appropriate boundaries and not setting appropriate expectations on yourself. You're not perfect. You will make mistakes and you will forget things. You will struggle sometimes. You will find yourself needing to say no to people you don't want to say no to, and you'll get overwhelmed. All of those are things that happen to everyone with pretty much any amount of responsibility. And for leaders, they're just part of the program. So what should you do? Well, start by accepting it. You're human and you're not perfect. You're not all powerful. You're not all knowing, and that's okay. This means you can delegate tasks that you couldn't complete yourself. The more senior you are, the more likely that is to happen, and that's fine. It's why companies and teams exist in the first place. Accept that you'll make mistakes, and when you do, see them not as a sign to just give up, but rather as an opportunity to learn, to improve. You can't always guarantee that you won't make a similar mistake in the future, but you can take steps to make it less likely. Stop thinking of yourself as needing to be the smartest person in the room. Stop needing to have all the answers. Talk less, listen more. It's totally fine to go to a meeting with your team in which you say nothing, apart from maybe offering the team encouragement and support. In fact, that's kind of the ideal you should be aiming for. Your team has what they need. They're not blocked by anything and they don't need anything from you right now. So don't force your views on them unless they're actually needed. Obviously, you shouldn't take this too far. As a leader, there will be many situations in which your opinion or your knowledge or your expertise are required. No reason not to offer it in those situations, of course. I'm just saying that in general, you should feel comfortable and happy if you find yourself in the other kind of situation. And when you do, luxuriate in it. Ask for help. A lot of inexperienced leaders seem to think that by being given the leadership title or role, they've made a commitment not to ask for help ever again. In fact, you should be asking for help more as a leader than you did as an individual contributor, because as an individual contributor, you were probably pretty expert in what you did, whereas as a leader, you're probably still fairly early on the journey. So find a mentor or a coach or both or more than one of each and tell them what you're struggling with. Listen to what they say. It won't always be helpful and it won't always be exactly right, but if you're in a situation in which you don't know how to proceed and you listen to someone more experienced than you, it will almost always help you find a way forward. I mentioned overwhelm earlier. I think this is a really common phenomenon amongst leaders, even the ones who have fully embraced their human limitations. For advice on how to deal with overwhelm in leadership, check out the video that's on screen now. And if you found this video useful, please do click the like button or maybe even subscribe to my channel. It all helps. Bye. See you soon.